Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning or evening, depending on where you are, for this week's Optim Webinar. It's titled How to Create Real-Time 3D for AEC Using Unreal Engine. And let me give the brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. So first, we're going to talk about Unreal Engine in general and some of the use cases that we've used it for here at Theia Interactive for our own AEC visualizations. And that'll kind of set us up for what is the process to create those sorts of experiences or those sorts of visualizations in Unreal. And then, of course, we want to show you Optim. We want to show you how it fits into your workflow, whether you're just getting started or you're already using Unreal Engine, and show you how to use it to create your first interactive AEC design review application. We will have, I'm assuming, plenty of time for Q&A at the end, and I will be watching it the whole time. There is the official Q&A button down at the bottom of Zoom, and I will also be watching the chat the whole time. I definitely want it to be interactive, and your Q&A could be about Optim, or it could be about Unreal Engine in general. We've done quite a few Unreal Engine projects for architectural use cases, so if I don't know the answer to your question, I at least will point you in the right direction, for sure. So, first, mini background. This is an Optim webinar. Optim is an Unreal Engine product, but I am from Theia Interactive. So Theia has been doing Unreal Engine projects for the last 6 years as a world-leading provider of immersive solutions. So that includes architectural walkthroughs, planning, meetings, multi-user configurators, all sorts of AEC applications we get brought in to help creatively solve that in a real-time environment. So we've been around the block for quite a while. And the first of my couple use cases I want to share with you about why an Unreal Engine workflow is really great and highly recommended is from our good customer Toll Brothers out of Philadelphia here in the United States. They build a number of very large, expensive, high-end custom homes. And they had selected us to build some virtual model homes where users could actually walk through all 3 stories, all 3,000 to 5,000 square feet of the home. You could actually walk out, see the landscaping, and see all the other buildings of the complex. And this is for I think a 350 unit build plan in New York. So a huge footprint, a huge construction time. Not a lot of space there or time to actually do the pre-leasing before they opened. So they were able to utilize this virtual reality walkthrough in the sales center, put people through it, give the tour, answer questions, and prompt a really engaging discussion about the property. But beyond VR, because we all know that Unreal Engine is a game engine, creates interactive content, you can do virtual reality really easily. However, the reason I'm bringing up this project is because there's so much more to the Unreal Engine workflow that, of course, we would use ourselves and would encourage anyone else to use. For example, Tool Brothers used the collateral material just everywhere. This is the main page of their website for these properties, and it's an Unreal Engine rendering. There's no need to go outside to other pieces of software, no need to have another company or another team work on it with a different workflow. It's the exact same scene as the VR, just in a more static sort of environment. And because it wasn't real time for the renders, we were able to turn on some more advanced settings. This was actually before RTX was even available. But these days you can have RTX on and RTX off and really get the best of both worlds when delivering content for your customers or for your team. So they were able to utilize, let's see, I think like 100+ renders that we were creating for them, which we don't even charge extra for because they're essentially free to us because Unreal Engine is so efficient at rendering. And those previous images were actually rendered out at like 6,000 by 8,000 resolution, so print quality for brochures. And that's it. As if that wasn't enough, we kind of combined the two and created a web-based VR experience as well. So inside Unreal Engine, using NVIDIA's Ansel plugin, there's a couple options of alternatives to that. But we used Ansel to create 360-degree renders. And we stitched these together into RoundMe, which is a website, very low cost for virtual tours. And essentially, we could put together 30 plus of these images into a full home and embed that on any website for anybody to view on any device. So we have the super intense, graphics card driven VR experience if you go to the sales center. We have the really lightweight 2D images just for social media. And then we have somewhat lightweight immersive 360-degree renders for a different way of doing that same tour. So by keeping everything in Unreal and planning this out from the beginning, we were able to really stretch the dollar, really get the most bang for our buck on that project. One more example of the way we use Unreal is for this project we did for Bully and Andrews out of Chicago. They're working on a new hospital, and this is the the infant and natal intensive care unit. So a very small, very important room. And they were using us for design review, where it's an empty room right now, but you can actually load in any assortment of equipment and machinery and appliances and see where it's going to fit. And that's really important for seeing how much equipment you can put in the room, but also for how easily reachable are things. For example, the gas outlets on the wall behind that bed, they actually, after doing our VR session, even though everything was technically planned out, they had to rearrange those because you actually couldn't reach them. And the only reason they knew that was because of in VR actually trying to reach them. And besides design review, this was actually used for training. So they put the new nurses and doctors and other hospital staff into the VR experience so that they could see and feel the room and get accustomed to those tight spaces before it was the first day on the job. So before it's physically available, they could actually still go through some training procedures and still get familiar and comfortable with the space, which is really incredible. And of course, if necessary, this training application could also be used for high-end renderings in order to, sell the room or show it in a presentation or what have you. So we always encourage using your same Unreal Engine application for as many purposes as possible. So what is the process to do this? Well, it's a very big question because Unreal Engine is a very big topic. You could be a professional, lighter in Unreal, a professional modeler, professional gameplay scripter. There's so many things that it does and so many ways you can do it that, of course, it would be impossible for me to describe every aspect of that on a 30 to 40-minute webinar. And this webinar is meant to provide useful and valuable information for people that are just checking out Unreal Engine or who have also already gotten in there. But let's first start off with some quick tips on how to make the most of an AEC workflow, especially if you've got a small team. Number one, a lot of people do not know that there is a Twinmotion Material pack on the marketplace, the Epic Games launcher, the Unreal Engine marketplace. So Twinmotion is the Unreal Engine alternative product for architects where it's super, super simple, but you actually can get like 100 plus really realistic, nice materials for architecture for free, authored by Epic Games, and you can inject it straight into your project. Really gets you up and running really quickly, and also works well with Optim, which I will talk about a little bit later. Another quick tip is many people don't know about the HDRI Backdrop. If you search for that term, especially on Google, but it is a plugin in Unreal, and it has a special actor you can bring into your scene, and you can load up any HDR image. There's some technical specifications there, but it will put it on the ground and as an infinite skybox and light your scene realistically. So you don't have to set up a mesh, set up a new material, set up a new light, and hope that they coordinate with one another. It actually is basically an out-of-the-box, full-on lighting environment with a ground plane as well. Really, really useful for putting in new skies or just about anything. Tip number 3 for how to make the most of your Unreal Engine experience. It's one thing to get all your content into Unreal, which is somewhat easy these days. There's more and more ways to do it. However, in the meantime, for the next year or so before Unreal Engine 5 comes out, you're going to still have to do a lot of optimization. So to make the most of a real-time experience and actually get a high frame rate for your touch screen display or get a high frame rate for your VR headset, which is really important, you're definitely going to want to measure some of these performance stats. So the two best ones that I recommend are what we call profile GPU. And when I have it in quotes down there, that means that's the actual thing you type in if you're to use the console command in the editor, which means you'd hit the little tilde key next to the number 1 if you're on the US keyboard and say profile GPU. You could also do Control Shift comma as a hotkey. And this will show you exactly what is taking up the most render time in your scene as far as the GPU is concerned. So you could realize that your post-process and your ambient occlusion that you had set up by default, that could actually take up 20% of your total frame rate. And maybe you didn't need it for that scene, so you can go and turn that off, remeasure, and kind of massage the performance of your scene in that way. Super, super handy. The other one is stat unit. There on the right-hand side. Again, it's a console command, so you have to use that tilde key. And this will bring up 4 main values. The frame value with the 16 milliseconds here on the screen, that's the total frames per second, measured in milliseconds though. So that's just the final output, but the other 3 contribute to it. And whichever one of those 3 below it is the highest number, so this GPU time here is really long and matches the frame, that means that I am bound by the GPU. So if I need more frame rate, I need to reduce the rendering cost of the scene, which would be from the resolution, from the material complexity, some of the lighting, and some other post-process effects. If the game thread is the highest value, or maybe a little too high, that is the logic of your game. So if you have a blueprint for your moving object and it's thinking about something really complex every single frame, trying to figure out where it belongs, that could contribute to a bad frame rate. For most AEC applications, we typically don't see the game thread get very high. And then the draw time is somewhat of a combination of the two. It's still about the CPU usage for the most part, but it is tied to primarily the number of objects in your scene. So if you have 20,000 objects, your computer will bog down even if you were to change your resolution dramatically. So keep an eye on that one. Again, the draw is going to be primarily about dynamic shadows and or object count. All right, that was not as quick of a tip as I thought. So the overview of the Unreal Engine workflow is three or four main pieces. One is importing your model. I'll just give the rundown. Importing your model, managing the scene or optimizing it, building in any features you need, and then packaging and delivering that to the client. You can't really skip too much of that. So the import is, if you have something in Revit or you have something in SketchUp or even 3ds Max, anything at all, so many file types are supported these days, you would want to bring that into Unreal via the Datasmith importer or via Optim's importer, which I will touch on later. And there's a couple other methods as well. V-Ray has an importer, NVIDIA is building an importer. There's a lot of things out there like that. Then once you have your models in Unreal, there's still a bit of work to be done. Most likely, your Datasmith import will bring along the materials from your original software. However, they might not be amazing materials worthy of your VR design review session. Maybe they're placeholders, maybe they're flat colors, low resolution, or maybe you got your model in there, but there's no lights yet. So there's some setup to do there. And then once you've set up your materials and your lighting, you still have to keep an eye on what that has actually done to your performance and if you're ready to, end up delivering it. And then there's features. So this would be if you're building a interactive walkthrough application, if you're building a configurator for multiple design options, or any other sort of custom interactivity that might be helpful for your presentation or your client. And then there's the packaging and delivery stage, which is sometimes naturally left to the last minute. However, you want to make sure you're doing that very early on, because if things run well in the editor or work perfectly in the editor, once you package that, it really has to stand on its own 2 legs. And every once in a while, there will be a little technical hiccup with Unreal that you don't want to overlook. as well as sometimes to package that application, you're going to need other software like Visual Studio Community, which if you follow the documentation on Unreal, it's not too hard to set up, but you'd hate to be learning that on the day you need to deliver your application. Okay, so now there's these different areas of how to build your Unreal project, and Optim happens to cover quite a bit of that. So Optim is a suite of tools to accelerate the real-time rendering pipeline. And we built Optim for our own needs here, developing Unreal Engine projects, and have opened it up to the public. And it covers three main categories. One is to automate the importing of your model. Most people, when they import a complex AEC model, are going to want to replace the materials or merge together the objects or maybe create some instances. And those are typically done by hand. So the Optim importer can help you handle some of that upfront. And then we have optimization stage or other utilities where you're inside the editor now, your model is there, but you still need to do a lot of work to it, and we can help you there. And then what we're really excited in the last couple months that has come out is our ability to help you deliver really impressive multi-user collaborative sessions from your Unreal Engine application, which I will cover how to do that too. So first we have the importer. This is what Optim originally launched with last year. And this will load in your datasmith file that is coming out of 3ds Max or Revit or SketchUp. And we have some support for other CAD formats as well. And the first thing on this list here is replacing materials, which ties right back into that Twinmotion material pack. So if you were to import that Twinmotion material pack to your project, and suddenly you have 100 amazing materials, with the Optim importer, you could load up your Revit model, and actually, before it gets to Unreal and before you have to go and drag and drop all of those material replacements, you can set it up ahead of time and save out those rules so that the next time you import that model, or the next time you import a model with the same materials, it will actually load up and replace those materials in accordance with what you set up. And very similarly, we can set up rules for merging together the objects or deleting objects entirely so that you don't have to touch it once it's in the editor. So then the second piece of Optim, which I will be giving a live demo of a little bit later, is our in-editor toolkit, which gives you really quick access to a lot of common functionality in the engine. It's really important things you need to do to your scene, like clean it up or delete useless objects, or even just change light map resolutions or polygon resolutions. And we can help you do that really quickly without needing to dig through a bunch of menus and editors and scroll through those details. And finally, there's the collaboration aspect where with the Optim plugin installed, you can basically in 10 minutes or less set up a multi-user VR session that lets you and your partners jump into your scene and explore it with a variety of design review tools like a VR camera, a whiteboard pen, a laser pointer, and things like that. It also comes with voice communication, so you could be talking to someone from across the world inside your VR scene, and it's no extra cost for that. It's really easy to set up. So I think it's about time for a live demo. This is a Unreal Engine scene that we've worked on for quite a bit now with our friends at Getty's. And it serves as a pretty good example of a scene that is an interior scene, but has a lot of objects to it. So it was something we had to spend a lot of time optimizing. But what you'll see here in the top is our Optim icon. So once you go download Optim and install it, which you have a 14-day free trial, by the way, you can launch our toolkit, which is this window right here. And this first screen will give you information about your licensing or links to documentation. It will also launch the importer that I talked about previously, but I will not be going in depth on that. And as you may know, if you've watched previous webinars or downloaded Optim for yourself, there are several menu items on the left-hand side for different capabilities of Optim. We have selection sets, optimization, tools, which are also random utilities, and then we have the template installation. I'll just quickly do the overview and then focus on a couple of these specifics that can really help the AEC folks out there get up and running really quickly and make the most use of their time in the engine. Something that's really handy is selecting based on logic. For example, if you had an architecture scene open and you realize you needed to move all the chairs or delete all the chairs or replace the materials on all the chairs, you might have to go and scroll through this outliner and hunt and peck and select and shift select and figure out what you're trying to get to. However, if you happen to have good naming convention, you can actually use Optim to search here for the name and search for chair. And we will automatically select all the chairs in the scene. And you can do what you need to do there. And then you can also, of course, filter that down further and remove pieces from that or add pieces to that. And it's not just name, you can select by material. I wonder what's a good example of this. Matrix. So anything with the matrix material, I can select. And it turns out it's just that one floor. But you get the point. You can search for anything with concrete, anything with fabric, anything with the default grid material, and then go and apply your changes to that really easily. And there's many, many other ways of selecting stuff with like the size of the object or the complexity of the object, or even one of the cool ones that we offer is our selection volume. So this whole outdoor area here contains a variety of assets that are different shapes, sizes, names. But if I wanted to consistently select them for some reason or another, I can actually spawn a selection volume, which is now on top of my camera. And in this upper area, I could scale it up as big as I need. And for any objects that this volume encompasses, when I have it selected, I can just click the select button and it will select all the meshes within it. So really, really handy for creating different areas of your level that you really want quick access to if you needed to change the light map resolution of all outdoor areas or move all the interior objects to movable instead of static. Really, really can save you minutes or hours just within those few clicks alone. Moving on to the optimization section, I've covered this in detail on previous webinars, so keep an eye out or search for those links, or definitely open this up and play around. It's really straightforward where you can select any object and immediately apply levels of detail or immediately apply light map resolution tweaks, which is super, super handy. For example, here in this light map view mode, there's quite a bit of red furniture, which means it's got a really high res light map on it. Perhaps because the player, the user, is not going to be outdoors, I would want to lower that down. So I can select one or many of these objects and just go right to my light map resolution section. I'm going to uncheck override so it applies to the parent asset. And I can just select low, which is a default. And I could select medium, high, or I could define a very custom resolution, but it will immediately adjust the resolutions accordingly for those meshes and all of their similar meshes. And you can do that one at a time, many at a time, and there's no reason to go and select and hunt through the details panels and hunt through the static mesh editors anymore to try to figure out these defaults and type in literal numbers when you're just trying to make the best use of your time. So some other things here. The destroy overlapping meshes is, I believe, new to 1.2.3 and is so handy that I actually learned something new while working in this project. I thought that this project was as perfect as it possibly could be. Not much has changed about it in the last year that we've been practicing on it and using it for demos and showing it off to customers. However, I realized just by clicking the deletion button that we actually had a mesh in here that was a duplicate asset that served no purpose. So this little hoop looks fine, luckily, but sometimes you'll find some stuff that doesn't look good. What's funny is that there's an identical one underneath it. And I'm glad that they both ended up fine. It didn't cause errors, didn't cause a bad render to happen. And in the worst case scenario, you could find in your own model that you have hundreds of objects that are overlapping. And you might not know about it because they're all just buried here in the outliner and you didn't see them, but they're going to contribute to the performance cost, they're going to contribute to the light build time, and they're going to contribute to graphical errors. But what's really neat is with the destroying of overlapping meshes. This is our own algorithm to determine if an identical mesh is perfectly on top of itself. So you'll see here that there's, see, poop 5. What is the other one underneath it? Poop 3. And I have a total of 641 actors in the scene. All I have to do is make sure I'm on the level for the target, and I just click remove, and it has automatically deleted one object from my scene, which I realized was this object, and now there's no other poof on there. Really, really handy. That can save you a huge headache. Something you could do as soon as you import, something you could do towards the end of your project when you're trying to get that performance really, really optimized. Moving on to other utilities, we're trying to build in a lot of random features into Optim that we've needed as a team. One really fun one was scheduling a light build. So for quite a few applications, you're still going to be using static lighting. Even though RTX is a thing, even though you could throw many graphics cards at something, if you're running VR, you're still going to need a static light build. So we actually built a scheduler for that, because if you're on a networked machine, or even if you're by yourself, doing a light build can really bog down your computer and make it really hard to use. So you can actually define an exact time of day for later in the evening or on my lunch break, and schedule that light build to occur exactly when I want it to occur, and I don't have to remember to go and click that button. There's another one here for flatten hierarchy. And what this does is, if you have a bunch of nested objects that are parented to each other, the flatten hierarchy will move them all to be the root objects of themselves. And your mileage may vary if that matters for your scene. What we've noticed quite a few times is that many scenes have locators on locators on locators that end up as empty objects in the outliner. And it clutters up the viewport, it bogs down the editor because those are all individual objects to technically render. So what we can do is flatten the hierarchy, which moves it all out from under there, and then follow it up with clean empty actors. And what this does is, if there's an object that does not have a mesh component, does not have custom functionality inside of it, and it's essentially a locator, you can just delete it automatically instead of hunting and selecting and deleting. One other really handy utility, especially for us in the ArcGIS business, is the overridden materials. So what this does is, these two poofs are the same exact asset, but one of them has an overridden material. And this poof only has one material slot, which is lucky. But let's say I needed that blue material to actually be the default for every other poof in the scene. I would have to open up the asset for it. And then I would have to find my blue material, drag it into that default slot there, and it would apply to every other poof in the scene, and I will undo that. So that's not too bad, but let's say you have a complex object with a dozen materials on it, and you've assigned your cool Unreal Engine materials there in the viewport, and it's good to go, and then you realize you have to assign those 12 materials back to make it the default for everything else. Well, what we actually do is, with one button, we can push through the override and make it happen on the parent asset, if you caught that. It just takes a blue material that was applied and pushes it through to be the default for all those other poofs in the world. And it doesn't have to be a poof, it can be anything. So with the time we have left, I really want to show off the next level of what to do with your AEC scene. So presumably you have imported it successfully via Datasmith or via the Optim importer. You've used our toolkit to really speed up your day-to-day activities, whether you're needing to create LODs or you're needing to adjust light map resolutions. And now you actually need that compelling VR experience, let's say. Now you could use an Unreal Engine template. You could buy something else on the marketplace. However, the Optim multi-user collaboration template is really robust, really easy to use, really easy to install on any new project, and really high quality. So all you do is, in the template section of the UI in Optim, under template installation, you hit install or download and install. In my case, it's reinstalled because it's been cached on my computer and I can easily apply it to any project whatsoever. Once you click that, your internet speed would have a variation here, but it would get the latest and greatest content from our website for the template, which we update on a monthly or bi-monthly schedule, and install that in all the right places of your project. And when you click the restart button that appears, it will also configure all the right config settings for the collision channels, the voice over IP, multi-user connectivity, all the interactive, button mappings we need for our template. So there's no extra configuration needed from you except for two tiny things. One is under plugins. You're going to want to make sure that the Optim template plugin is enabled. So that's here under the installed section. Just make sure that checkbox is hit. And then under built-in, you're going to want to make sure that the Niagara plugin is installed. And most newer versions of Unreal are going to have that automatically enabled. 424, which this project is not. So Niagara and Optim template plugins. And then the one extra setting is making sure that when we start up the game, it's going to start up in your level. Because we actually do provide you a level with the Optim template. It's this really cool concrete design studio where you can get together and talk about anything in VR or stage a little presentation for yourself. But if you want this bar deck level to be the one we jump into when I send the executable to my partner, then we need to go to the content browser and search for the word game. And this will bring up the BP Theia game instance. And this is gonna be obsolete in the next version of Optim next month, where the setup process is even easier than this and you don't have to enable those plugins. But for the time being, this is the one spot you have to put one parameter. It's gonna load up soon here. And the name of my level is bar deck. And in this game instance class, under the details, there is a starting map attribute that I just need to make sure is titled bar deck instead of conference room, which is our other level, which I can load up in time for Q&A as well. And as long as you have a player start here in the world, which I always recommend having, you kind of need it. If you were to search here for player start, it's this icon that you should be familiar with. As long as that is in the world, when you enter this game, will pop up there. And to send this to a client, to send a multi-user collaborative session, you package the project, target Windows 64, and then you've got it ready to go. So this is the final output of that. The project folder, as usual, but it has, by default, the Windows No Editor folder there as well. And this contains the executable and all the supporting files and folders for the application. And if I run this, and again, you can zip this up really easily, send it to whoever you want. They don't need an Optim license to use it either. This is the application we've built that we can send, and when the user boots up, they can put in their display name, choose a color that matches their avatar and matches their laser pointer. You can do a solo session, or you can do the multi-user sessions. You can do the local network if you're on a VPN, or you can do the internet, which is our favorite one. Now, the internet connectivity does require Steam, the same Steam application that has the game store on it. And as long as you're logged into Steam and have it running in the background, that allows you to automatically connect with other people who have your exact same executable. So you don't need to type in IP addresses, you don't need to configure any routers. You just load it up and you either host a session or join a session. And you'll see their name pop up and you can jump into there with somebody. And once you choose your platform, either desktop or VR, then you can just connect and be inside your application with the gameplay. So this is like the desktop mode of the same application, really high quality, full screen, and you can just fly around and you'll see other people in there with you. So I'm going to warm you up a little bit by reminding you that you can ask any questions in the Q&A here on Zoom or post a message in the chat. We're going to be wrapping up within the next 10 minutes, but I would love to answer any questions you have about Optim or about Unreal Engine, and especially the AEC workflow that we're here to talk about. In the meantime, I will also load up the Design Studio conference room that we provide with Optim. So in any project that you install that template content into, there's a new Optim folder at the root of your content. And then there's a template folder and a maps folder. And then there's a conference room with the conference room level. And if you were to package the Optim application without configuring that default level, you would basically pop into this. And it's a high quality, realistic, polished concrete room that just gives you a generic space to host any meetings you want. So you could stage scale model presentation, you could use this as just a loading point, or you could purposefully just leave it as is, get in the conference room and talk to one another. And these whiteboards can actually be fully drawn upon with the whiteboard. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that, play the quick 60-second sizzle reel for that multi-user collaboration. And then if there are any questions, I'm going to tackle those next. So this is that same bar level that I was just showing you, but it's me and my team just a few weeks ago getting together for a design review session. So we've got a VR camera where we can render out 4K images right from within our scene. A spawnable whiteboard where we can bring out the pen and sketch and draw on each other's whiteboards and ideate in that way. And again, those big whiteboards in that other conference room are completely drawable. And you can load any content you want, whether it's AEC or not. It works in any Unreal Engine project. You can inject it anywhere. So if you're looking to have a high quality architectural or construction presentation, virtual tour, static renderings, whatever it is, you can and should use Unreal Engine for it. And I'm willing to bet that Optim is going to help you in that workflow as well. So without further ado, I will stick around for a few moments waiting for your questions. And I can also think of some of those frequently asked questions that people usually bring up in the meantime. People like to know about Oculus Quest support. It's a very in-demand platform because it's so portable and cheap, easy to use. Oculus Quest does not have full support in Optim yet. It won't work out of the box. We are working to resolve that. We do believe that Oculus Quest is very valuable. And in fact, the Oculus Quest is one of the hardest platforms to target because the processor is a little bit weaker. So you can't have many thousands of objects and you can't have many millions of polygons in there. So you will have to keep a close eye on performance, and hopefully you can use Optim to do some of those big clustered merges or those big decimation effects to make it run right. We have a great question about, is it possible to adapt the template to some other code base? For example, they use a fly stick and they use NDisplay for the displays. Yes, you can totally use the template for many other things. The good news is if you have Blueprint developers or Unreal Engine people who are, I want to say experts, but don't have to be necessarily experts, we actually provide all of the blueprints and code for those template assets here in the browser. So for example, if I go to blueprints, again, this is in the Optim folder, I can go to pawns, and we actually provide you the VR pawn and the desktop pawn. And if you know what you're doing or you feel comfortable, you can reach in here and you could place the meshes for the avatars. You can hook up your own blueprints for your own custom code. We plan on making this even easier to use by making really reusable components for replication component, grabbable component, things like that. But also you can always extend these with child classes, create your own pawn that uses your existing NDisplay cameras or whatever it may be. And as long as it's using that same framework, you would have a really complex setup joined into a multi-user session with somebody's random desktop. So it should be really customizable. We would love to know if you have any issues or if there are any caveats that we have not accounted for, and we can make sure that on the next release it's a little fine-tuned to that workflow. Another question has come in. Can you import or add 3D models using the multi-user template at runtime? So that is one of the big headaches with Unreal, is you want to load in all your content, take hours and hours, zip it up, send it, and then it is what it is. Loading the content at runtime is on our roadmap. We have some new templates coming out in the coming months that get much, much closer to that and are designed for that. It may be technically possible. In 4.25, I believe, and especially what I hear is expected for the future versions of the engine, is that the whole datasmith importer can actually operate at runtime. So you could do almost everything in the application itself. So there's no reason why you couldn't, if you're in a rush to do that, you can extend the existing Optim code base, make just a custom blueprint that loads in that runtime stuff if that code is available. I'll have to double check on that. And it can work with the template. We do not yet provide it out of the box, but it is on the roadmap for sure. And as well, an extension of that, I'll tell you, we're also looking into dynamically loading images and videos. So for example, when you render out an image with that VR camera in the scene, it saves it to your computer and you can actually view it again in VR. There's a whole render view where you can scroll through the existing screenshots you've taken in previous sessions even. So we plan on making that a lot more robust where people can see each other's images that they've saved, or you could just preload in some of those renders ahead of time and bring them up for presentation within the application too. These are good questions. These are ones I have not had in previous sessions, so thank you very much. So we're coming up on our time. Thank you so much for joining this session. I hope you picked up something, whether you're a new Unreal user or an advanced Unreal user. We do these webinars every other week now, so definitely keep an eye on our social media pages or go and sign up for our newsletter in order to get the latest and greatest. Sometimes they're very, very broad. Sometimes they're very specific on industries or features. This one was a little bit broad, but kind of met in the middle there. And if you have any other requests for types of presentations or topics you'd like to cover, definitely let us know and we can address those in the next one. Or we also love to get on to calls with our customers. So we'd be happy to do a live demo, focus in on any of these features you may have seen or heard about, see if it's going to work for you. And if you want to do it on your own before that, you can go to theia.io/Optim and you can go get your 14-day free trial right now. So that will include the importer and the toolkit and the VR collaboration sessions. And you can ask us for help all along the way. So it's a really great deal. Definitely go and try it. And we look forward to hearing how it goes.